You are now listening to Soundspace, the podcast where we interview experts and professionals in the space of sound.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soundspace. Today, I'm joined with, once again, my amazing co-host, Anthony Cacci. How are you, Anthony?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Doing very good. Very excited about our guest today. We have a treat for the audience. If you are a fan of electroacoustic music, if you are a fan of synth rock, if you're a fan of sound installations, compositions, this is going to be an amazing listen for you. So let me please introduce you all Danielle Savage, a sound artist with many incredible accomplishments and projects under her belt. She has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Electroacoustic Studies with a specialization in composition from Concordia University, where she was also a research assistant for the head of the program, Eldad Tsabary. She has studied composition with the likes of Georges Dimitrov, Sandeep Bhagwati, Rosemary and José Luis Hurtado, and was a member of the Concordia Laptop Orchestra in 2018. Her work has also been interpreted by different ensembles. These include Low Frequency Trio and the Bozzini Quartet. Her works have also appeared in Foro de Musica Nueva at the University of New Mexico and at the 60 by 60 Festival at Concordia. Other festivals she has been a featured artist for include Radio WWOZ New Orleans, Santa Barbara Public Television, ArtsWells Festival, Lux Magna Festival, and Kulak's Woodshed Hollywood. Her personal projects also include Migration Parade, an interactive and collaborative sound installation, Loon Town, a 4-piece pop synth rock indie band where she performs vocals and guitar, and like previously mentioned, Low Frequency Trio, Une journée dans la vie du Grand Géocoucou. Let's please give a warm welcome to Danielle Savage. How are you, Danielle?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a treat. It's a pleasure. Going through everything you've accomplished was amazing to research, and I have so many questions. I really want to start with the beginning here, not getting technical or anything, but because you've done so much music in the past, when did music become of importance to you, and what was the experience like for you discovering that?
Oh man, it's so hard to pinpoint that because it feels like it's always been there, you know?
Yeah.
So I can't, it's hard to say, but I'll maybe delve all the way back into childhood. There's a couple things I could share with you.
Sure.
Please.
Like, these are just general impressions. I don't know. Yeah, it's not technical at all, but I remember lying in my bedroom as a kid and the radio streaming in as I was falling asleep from the other room. Things like that, sensations like that, where it just felt, I don't know, it just, it was a crazy sensation. Or like actually dreaming music and waking up and trying to make the songs in the dreams, you know? And then just sitting at the piano as a kid and just kind of clunking out whatever, just random impressions. It's not like I had any training. Okay. I wasn't taking lessons or anything, but there was a piano at our house and I just started to kind of, I don't know, write little...
You went by ear?
I went by ear at the beginning for sure. Yeah, I just started to write little fragments of songs. And then I did take some piano as a kid, but, you know, by the time I was 13 or something, I had quit and then discovered guitar when I was 16. And I very quickly made a link between guitar and the outer world because I started busking almost immediately. Like as soon as I could play 3 songs, I went outside the liquor store and I just started playing them for people, you know?
Oh, wow.
And
nice.
I was like, yeah, so I just kind of, I made this link like, oh, this is a way to interface with the public, a way to put myself out there and a way to make money, you know? And then pretty soon, like for the next, I don't know, maybe, I want to say 6 years or so, I mostly survived on that and like survived as a, you know, all I was doing. But it was kind of just became a necessity in a funny way. And and then became something I literally couldn't live without. And I think some of it is just maybe there's nothing else I could do for a long enough period of time, you know, whether it was because of lack of skill or it wasn't compelling enough, you know, music is the only thing that kind of sustained an interest and it was kind of always there. But yeah, I'd say something about getting a guitar when I was 16 was definitely pivotal in terms of like just pretty immediately jumping into the experience of live performance.
Yeah.
Right. I'm really interested when you said you were dreaming music and then you could play. Like, I just want to jump specifically to that for a minute because I've never heard someone say that ever before. Can you be more like in detail about that? Because that's so interesting to me. You were dreaming sounds. My dreams are pretty silent, I think. I don't know.
I don't even remember my dreams. Like,
yeah, honestly, it's so interesting that I've never heard someone say that before.
Oh yeah, well, it felt kind of dorky to say, but it's true. Like I don't know. I'd hear like the most beautiful music I've ever heard, probably to this day, in dreams, and it's not that often that it'll pop out at me, but when it does, I'll just frantically try to get back to that. And occasionally, like a line or two will stick, but sometimes it's abstract or inaccessible enough to my conscious mind that the sensation was like, holy shit, that was the most beautiful music I've ever heard, but I can't quite get it out. And then other times, like, stuff will pop out like a little melody, and I've integrated that into songwriting at times, for sure.
Okay. And what made you decide to follow through with that into your studies? Because obviously you were busking, doing all these activities musically before decided to like clamp down on education. What made you decide to make that jump? Because not everyone does it, you know?
Oh, yeah. Maybe frustration. I don't know, because I didn't have any training as a guitarist. I just, like I said, jumped into live performance right away. It was a really amazing experience. I got to play with people that were far better than me all the time. And at a certain point, I felt like I was writing the same material over and over again in a funny way, like both thematically, but also sonically. And I felt pretty limited by the guitar itself, I guess, or at least my relationship to it. And I didn't know how to change it. Also, school is something I just hadn't done because I just jumped into like street performance and kind of hitchhiking around and stuff. So I didn't actually do any post-secondary until I was in my late 20s. So it was partly just the new experience of it. It was partly frustration with my own abilities, and then just curiosity is in terms of like, what else can I bring into the room or into my, I don't know, skill set, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Right. I understand. Yeah. I think frustration is like a good thing to have once in a while because it kind of shakes you up and makes you go, let's just try something new. Like I've been playing the same songs, I've been busking on the same street corners, and I just want to like go somewhere else and try something new. And it also takes a lot of courage to do that. So I find that very, very cool that like you just made that leap, you know?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Just it felt good. It felt really good, actually. Yeah.
Of course. And what was your experience like at Concordia? Let's maybe get a little bit into your education, and then we can talk about the festivals, the collaborations, the sound installations, because we have so many like cool projects that you went through. But I feel like as someone who attended the program too, and maybe someone else who is thinking of attending it, for our listeners, what was your experience like at Concordia? How long were you there for? Let's kind of go through the motions of that.
Sure, yeah. Well, I was probably there like many of us, maybe too long. I ended up there. Well, I did a year exchange in Albuquerque. Okay. But the total time at Concordia was 6 years because I did a composition degree first, like an undergrad in and actually I just entered into the general music program, but for piano, but I was probably the worst pianist at Concordia, no. Like in the well, no, I don't mean that to be self-deprecating, just realistic. Like I practiced enough piano to be able to get in on that instrument because I was totally self-taught on guitar. So at least I could read music for piano, but I really quickly loved the composition program and everything about it and discovered like that's all I wanted to do. It felt like an extension of songwriting, but with more layers. You're like, oh, now I get to write a string quartet. Oh, now I get to try my hand at writing some orchestration for orchestra. And it felt like a really amazing way to just expand the sonic palette, you know?
Yeah, sure.
So I did that kind of first. And then through that was already kind of feeling frustrated, I guess, by the limits of like equal temperament and standard harmony and stuff, and more interested in like the timbral qualities of music, which you can totally access through just traditional acoustic composition. But I found electroacoustic space, like it just gave so much more just possibility you really can like sit in a room alone and control the world, your own little sonic world, you know?
Yeah, it's quite beautiful.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. So I still really love both. I love writing acoustic music and I love electroacoustic, but I was increasingly drawn to that. So after composition, like there was some crossover where I was doing both for a year or two, and then I just did the electroacoustic degree because it just felt super exciting, and then having access to the studios there, and just like was amazing. And I like, because I was very acoustic and sort of just literally just on the streets playing music for a long time, I only played acoustic music, and I had only played with acoustic musicians. So I had never even really played a synthesizer, let alone like played a MIDI note. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Electroacoustics. So it was really this insanely exciting process of discovery. Like I remember year one, like having access to that dope for analog modular synthesizer. It was just like, what is going on here? And I just got totally obsessed, and it was a really wonderful journey. So yeah, it was like some combination of having access to to the studios and then the people too, and just learning what everybody's different little obsessions are. Because I feel like the electroacoustics program at Concordia, it attracts a wide variety of people and different backgrounds and stuff. So I feel like I learned a lot, honestly, just from being in rooms with other people and going through that process too. So yeah, it was just really exciting. And then like discovering multi-channel composition, like, oh, you can make it come from that corner and that corner. And
yeah,
like,
there's more than just stereo
it was
there.
Just it was a wonderful. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, yeah, I mean, we all sat in like 5-channel theaters or whatever, but it was really exciting to be able to start to make sound specifically for that. And just discover the joy of knob twiddling, basically. And then I think because of my lack of history, like I'd recorded maybe a little bit with some DAWs, but like I said, I hadn't even really played a MIDI note when I got to the program and throughout the program. So I just got really into editing. And I think that was maybe Kevin Austin's influence too. But I didn't really like use that many plugins through the degree, which is funny. But like other than, maybe some reverb and delay and whatever, but it was mostly just, I thought of it almost as textile art where you're just taking one little sound and taking it apart and adding a few samples back in, reverse that, layer that, detune that, and just kind of like raw experimentation, but with
that's probably the reason why most of your compositions are very organic.
Oh, thanks.
Because of the minimal processing. So it's really, really great.
Thanks.
Very cool. And I would like to like maybe because you said over 6 years, so you started with composition and then you went into the electroacoustic program. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
So originally my question would have been like, what made you decide to specialize in composition? But like, what made you decide to do the jump? I really want, because, I personally got into Concordia and I finished in 2 years. I was just kind of like, okay, electroacoustic studies, cool. I want to go elsewhere now. I kind of like got what I needed, but for you, it must have been completely different.
Yeah, it was. Well, and I was already like, I had looked into that program as well before coming there and I was definitely interested in it, but it was pretty far removed from my experience. And then I think probably just through like exposure to other people, honestly, and like just being around Concordia and like going in some recording rooms and meeting somebody else and sitting in the synthesizer room one evening, you're like, holy shit, like there's a whole other world here and I want to experience that too. And like I said, I mean, they both still feel very, very rich to me. I really love working with acoustic music and all that can provide and the necessity of collaboration in acoustic music. Like you have to play with other people unless you're doing solo stuff, whereas with electroacoustic you can control like such a broad amount of sonic material just all by your lonesome. And I really value that because I enjoy the creation process probably more than the putting it out. So it's like tempting to become the man behind the curtain and that just sits in a little studio all day and does things by yourself. But I'm glad I've experienced both because I feel that I see the value of both.
Yeah, you become more of a complete composer because you dabble in two very different universes. So you have like, I'm sure even maybe in your compositional process, do you feel like it even influenced that? Like, how would you compare your compositional process pre-Concordia to post-Concordia? I think that would be a really cool thing to talk about.
Okay, yeah. One thing I think about compositional process, like probably the biggest difference I've noticed just sustained over time is the ability to like sustain an inquiry or a line of thought for longer and longer periods of time, because when I first started writing songs, I'd sit down and write a song in a day and I wouldn't even necessarily change it. I'd just start playing it and that was that. Right. And then gradually I was like, okay, I should probably edit some of this material and this song could really be 3 minutes instead of 7 minutes of me ranting about whatever my 18-year-old brain wants to say, And then as I began to, play with bands, those were like more sustained projects. But I'd say, going into university, you start working on stuff for months at a time. If you're thinking about a piece for orchestra or even a string quartet or something, you're writing it and rewriting it for sometimes up to 4 or 6 months, So I'd say that really gave me like, it really changed like how I think about duration, I guess. And then like I've carried that over into, now this, like the migration parade, for instance, has been going on for more than 2 years and it feels like we're just getting started. So there's like, that is probably one line of things that changed drastically in university. And then I would also say, for lack of better terms, my process moved from more sort of intuitive and like based on feelings that I needed to get out to more structures that I put in place. And those things came into it like at a later stage, if that makes sense. Like starting to work more conceptually, for instance, like I would would say, yeah, songwriting always felt like this really personal, almost confessional process of I had something burning inside that I needed to get out. Whereas moving into composition felt like, okay, what are the sonic materials I want to work with? What's the problem of the day? Like maybe I'm really obsessed with wood sounds right now or polyrhythms or something, and like sustaining that inquiry. And then I feel like, yeah, the more intuitive processes still come in, but there's a lot more structure to them, I guess. Just sometimes it's an intuitive process, sometimes it's conceptual, sometimes it's joyful, and sometimes it's a years-long wrestling match, you know? Like it depends. But I think all of those things are always there no matter where I was in my development. But it's definitely, yeah, the elements change over time for sure.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
So, we saw that you have collaborated with many professionals in your career. Can you explain the importance of collaboration and networking to us in your projects and what impact it has had on you?
Yeah, collaborations. It's become increasingly important. I would say, even though when I first started playing music, if you're playing on the street, people come, they sit down, oh, can I play slide guitar with you? Oh, can I play bass with you? You know, you kind of end up playing with a lot of people, and it feels spontaneously collaborative, but it was never a sustained collaboration in a funny way, or more like I had my process, and then when the songwriting was finished, maybe people joined me on that. But I don't think I really knew what it was like to collaborate from the beginning and to create something with somebody from its inception until probably the last 3 years, honestly.
Okay.
And now, like, yeah, both the band I'm working with and my collaborator, Alexandra Goodall, who I'm doing the Migration Parade project with, we make everything together from the beginning. And with Loon Town, the band, like the songs, you know, maybe one person says, oh, I have a bass line. They pass that over to the next person. They add some lyrics. Like, so there is a back and forth. It's not like we're sitting in the same room all the time.
Okay.
But all of the songs are born like together, or pretty much all of them are born like as a unit. And it's been gratifying to discover that, because I feel, I don't know, the more I'm doing it, the more I feel like it should be a shared process, if only to keep yourself in check. Like there's so many patterns you fall into naturally by yourself that other people can kind of rattle you out of, whether that's a tendency to like overload your songs with too many elements, or to disappear up your own hoo-ha, like conceptually, or I don't know, like the presence of other people creates results that you didn't anticipate, you didn't foresee, and suddenly there they are, and you're surprised by the result, and it's an amazing feeling. And when you're starting to lose steam, somebody else has it, and vice versa,
somebody
right?
else jumps in, for sure.
Yeah, so just it feels like projects breathe more and they live more, and I'm interested in them over a longer period. Like I always had this thing with songwriting where I'd write the song, it was this intense process, I loved it so much, and then as soon as it was done, like I could barely stand to think about it, let alone listen to it. And I'm finding with collaborations, I don't have that. I actually enjoying the process of creation and invested for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Right.
I could definitely relate with that whole looping thing.
Yeah.
Found myself making music and just listening to the same loop 172 times, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
That's like very electronic music based for me. Like whenever I was composing like little, like, I don't know, like hip hop beats or stuff like that, like, you know, just like looping on an 8-bar and being like, oh, I'm going to move my arpeggiator over here. Oh, maybe splice a kick out here, you know, and just working on just an 8-bar thing and then trying to like break it apart to make it more sustainable. I think that hitting on the sustainability of a sound and of a thought, I think that is a perfect way to say it, Danielle. Just trying to keep the musical movement going and keeping it interesting. It's something that takes years and years to achieve. So I can definitely like relate to what you're saying. I wanted to jump back to Concordia and conclude on it, because while researching you, I saw that you were a research assistant for Eldad. Actually, I think the way I was introduced to you was when you were teaching the 200 class and you were being a substitute for him. So I was wondering, like, how did that happen? What was the role like? I've never really delved into like that space before, so I'm really interested in knowing about that.
Yeah, like I don't think that there's a universal answer to that question, but specifically to like Eldad, I mean, even him, his like what his research assistants are doing evolves over time, right? Because he's always doing different projects.
Yeah.
But the one that I worked on, I came on as a teacher's assistant, and then the next year became a research assistant. So that kind of changed too. But basically, what he was working on at that time was the development of an electroacoustic ear training tool, and so there was an online and an offline version being developed, and there was multiple research assistants working on this project at McMaster master, as well as Concordia. Well, Concordia was just Jasmine LeBlanc Chartrand and myself. She was doing coding and design for the interface. And my job was, basically Eldad just asked me, we had a good rapport, and he just asked me if I wanted to try being a research assistant. And I was like, hell yes, I do. And
That's awesome.
My role in the project just involved like kind of analyzing texts, writing and editing, I would say mostly, and then some filling in for Eldad for classes for sure, which was super awesome learning experience too. And basically this just all led to the writing of a paper on the subject. But my initial task was basically to learn about like different research methods and then apply them to analyzing text from consenting students about their practices. So probably even y'all remember having some kind of like, do you want to partake in this research thing when you first got to class? And then if you did, then I was, there looking basically line by line, like drawing on the principles mostly of something called grounded theory, which is going line by line and kind of reframing what's there in a way that's a shortened version of what you're taking in that can be kind of called a code. So I don't know what a good example is, but if you say, it's basically creating categories for each line of or each idea of what the students are saying, and then once they're categorized, they get grouped into like categories, and then that way you can kind of see what's rising to the top in terms of what is everybody as a whole saying, how many times is this idea appearing. So like a lot of it was just that, it was coding, and then we went on to like writing this paper which got published in the Journal for Music Technology and Education. It was called Inner Ear, a Tool for Individualizing Sound-Focused Oral Skill Acquisition. And so it was really just about like how about how students acquire oral skills. And because, electroacoustic ear training is still being developed, it felt really, really interesting to just be on the team for that, and then in terms of like my personal self, it really helped me probably more than the degree even to hone my like writing skills and stuff. Specifically, I'd say it helped for like grant writing and stuff, and just being able to like think about text and rework text and be interested in that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So, but it was awesome, and Eldad's just so joyful and easy to work with, and he's got like, just a million insights into the human mind and electroacoustics.
Oh, yeah.
So it was really great. And then we brought that to a conference, and it was really, really nice working with him.
Nice. Yeah, no, I could definitely relate to. I did an independent study for him over the summer of 2018, and he's such a great person to collaborate with. I mean, I know he was just evaluating me. I was doing all the work, but at the same time, in that minimal time I had with him, I kind of learned a lot just being one-on-one with him. Like just being able to pick his brain on ideas that I was specifically working on, and it must have been a very enriching experience at the end of the day for you.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, he's got such a great mind, and you can come to him with anything personal, professional. And he's a wealth of knowledge. It's great.
Yeah. So maybe we can move over to festivals.
Okay.
So your works have been featured in many festivals. How do you go about finding them, submitting them? What exactly do you do?
Yeah, I guess it's some combination of following a trail of breadcrumbs and nothing in particular, or hard work, luck, nothing at all. I don't know, anything that's happened in life. I don't feel like there's too many things that have happened in a vacuum, totally unconnected to either people or other opportunities that have come before. Like it really is just a slowly building snowball of things that happen. But at the same time, like if I hear of an opportunity or a festival, or, even from an email list or something that seems like relevant and interesting, and I try to pursue it, even if it's really unconnected to anything that came before. So yeah, some combination of, but I'm not like sitting there every day just applying to festivals or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also like, I'm in my 30s, so there's been time to do things, and I do feel there is this thing about just staying in the room long enough, you start to just have more opportunities that are connected to your life, I guess, and it feels like a slowly building snowball. Like I remember I met this fellow that was studying at Cal Arts, and he was, I think, in his late 40s at the time, and had kind of a similar trajectory to me, where he had just done live music for years and only went to school like later in life, but he was kind of saying like, don't worry about it. Like in 15 years, like the snowball just gets big enough and people can start to assume like, this person's 50 now. If they're composing at 50, and they've been at it for 30 years, like there's something just to that. You know what I mean? Like there's something about just being stubborn and sticking with art making, because it's easy to just pull the plug and leave the room, you know?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that's a lot of it, but I feel like I'm excited to discover more festivals. I feel like there's so much out there I know nothing about, you know? It's, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure with each festival that you participate in, it just motivates you to continue getting others or accepting others.
Yeah, totally. Well, and even like, I don't know, yeah, you go to a festival, you meet one person and they have some interesting lead on one other thing. Like it's just it's a trail of breadcrumbs that's ever evolving, and sometimes things surface that, you know, 3 years later that you're like, oh yeah, that connection, or, you know, and
definitely. And what about when your piece gets accepted? Personally, I've never been to a festival. I did 60 by 60 twice, you know, because I was at Concordia and it kind of happened and I was kind of like, all right, sure, why not? What's it like having so many festivals under your belt with like all that success? It must, like, at some point you're just kind of like, oh, I've done this enough. I know what it's like. Like, what's the experience like for you?
Oof. Well, I don't mean this to sound gauche at all, but I feel like I'm still a novice in a certain way, you know, like I'm super thankful for every musical opportunity I've had, the ones that went well, the ones that I learned from, but it still feels like, you know what it is? I think if success exists, it's a feeling to me, to my mind at this moment, as we're talking, and feelings change, feelings evolve, feelings move. And so like that, like I've had those moments, I know what you're talking about, where you're exhilarated because something exciting happened and you think like, yes, like this is a milestone of sorts, right? But, you know, 3 days later, you're doing something else, and that feeling's gone, and you're like, it's not like for at least so far in life, it hasn't happened where there's a sustained feeling of, I am now successful, you know? It's something you get to experience every once in a while, and when something exciting happens, and then, like the most tangible sense of forward momentum that I experience is just when you're being like well received and clicking with people, whether experiencing their artwork and really understanding it, or them experiencing yours and really understanding it, you know? And I'd say like that sustains things, but yeah, if there's a like tangible feeling of success that gets to stay with you throughout life, I'm not there yet.
Give it time. I'm sure it's gonna happen eventually, right? It has to.
Yeah, well, and maybe these things aren't meant to be permanent, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's I don't know, like for me, like being out of school for about almost 2 years now, and like getting hired for different things, I'm just like, whoa, okay, cool. And then like perfectly described, like a few days later, it's like, okay, yeah, so that thing's gonna happen next week, you know, cool. But like in the moment, it's such a exhilarating, fun thing, and it's like, I think it's one of the reasons why we keep pursuing this musical dream, is because that rush, that like moment of knowing that you've made a new milestone, you want another one and another one, and it's just like you're piling up and building a structure of, I don't know, I think success is the right word, but I'm sure there's a better word for it, but just building a structure of success that you know you can like depend on, because if I've done this before, I can sure as hell do the next thing, you know? So it boosts your confidence and everything, so I can definitely relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think there's something just about, like, above all else for me, that is just the snowball effect of actual meaningful connection with other humans that through art making, you know? And it takes time, but when you have that sensation once, you're like, oh, I want that again, you know?
Absolutely.
So let's kind of go down the line and tell us about some of your musical projects.
Okay.
So we have the Low Frequency Trio, we have Loon Town, and we have Migration Parade. So can you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about Low Frequency Trio?
Okay, yeah. Well, so Low Frequency Trio, they're awesome. They're one of the few examples I can think of that they're a contemporary performance trio that only plays music that was composed for them by living composers. And so they have a real passion for playing and working with living composers, with music that's being made for, you know, a contemporary music now. And I think they're doing great work in that way. You know, it's awesome. And basically I did a year exchange when I was at Concordia in Albuquerque at the University of New Mexico. And when I was there, I took an orchestration class. and this amazing person who turns out to be in this trio, José Luis Hurtado, he's teaching the class, and he was just, there was something about just his insane passion for contemporary and new music that was really, really contagious. And he also insisted on writing everything by hand. So if you were writing for 10 instruments, you know, it's all got to come in by hand, and it's got to be perfect, like with ruler straight lines and everything.
For sure.
And for some reason, I just loved the rigor that he was sort of imposing, because at Concordia, the composition I'd done so far, like you could put things into notation software and just let the machines do it for you, you know? And there was something about just sitting in there, and we would play through the orchestrations that we do. So maybe you'd be given a piece and you orchestrate it for the players that are in the class, and then they play it the next week with the thing you've made, you know? And anyways, this is a little bit tangential, but that's how I met him. And basically we just kind of got on really well. And at a certain point, I had already been studying composition, but he didn't even know that. And he just said, "Hey, do you want to be my composition student?" Basically, because my lines were straight enough. He was like, "I like your ruler straight lines."
What? Really?
Do you want to? Yeah. Because like, I know it sounds funny, but and he's like, "Do you want to study composition with me?" So he took me on as a private student, and I'd just go into his office every week and we'd just riff on composition. And then he had these two other students too, and we'd go to his house and just kind of like drink beer and talk about composition. And it was a really amazing experience. And anyways, I started working on a piece like for his trio over time, and I can't remember how many months it took, but basically through the process of kind of being taken on as a private student with him, worked on this piece for them that was just so far outside of how it worked before. Like I was encouraged to just invent my own notation, draw on existing notation systems, and it really expanded like what I knew about notation in general. And then I had the opportunity to work with them directly and intensively, like in person, to transmit exactly my ideas with them as they practiced. And I'd never had that experience where people just actually wanted to sit down and be like, "Well, what did you mean by this?" And like really took direction well. And so I felt I was able to just be like, "Okay, you know, Hurtado, you got to slam your head down on the piano and then like throw your arms out," and like and made it kind of pretty overtly theatrical. And they were so game, and it was really kind of emboldening just to see that there are people that are willing to just be like, that's a great idea, let's do that, you know. And
that sounds like an incredible experience, honestly.
It was wonderful. And so then they've gone on to play that, like recorded that piece with some other compositions from other living composers, and they've also introduced me to a lot of just wonderful Latin American music. Like I went down to the Foro de Musica Nueva with them when they performed this piece there, and I just encountered so much phenomenal like new contemporary music, and it just got me way more inspired than I thought I could be about this branch of like new music being made, you know?
Right. That's so cool that you got to experience that. I'm sure that transformed you. Like literally you're not the same person because of that experience, I feel like musically of course. Totally no, and I told them that too, you know, because it was just it was special. Definitely. Wow. So let's talk about Loon Town. I listened to like basically all your songs on Spotify and Bandcamp, and it's a great band. I had no idea you were in a band as well. I was like, oh, what? She's in a band too, you know? And
thanks.
I really want to know, like, how did it come to form, and what was the history behind it? Because I also have other specific questions I want to hit on, like the song Exit Strategy, and let's just start with the beginning, maybe. How did Loon Town come to form?
Okay, yeah. Well, it kind of came on the coattails of the death of another band because that I wasn't even in. Yeah, but basically, like, my friend Dave and we ran a little tiny choir at Café Dépanneur back in like years ago in Montreal. And yeah, we were friends and we were musical friends. And
okay, I know the person who works there, like who owns the cafe.
Yeah,
that's really
I know
cool.
that.
It's a small world. Very cool. Sorry. Go ahead,
totally. Yeah, well, basically the owner just let us like have choir practice there once a week, you know, for a period of time. And Dave worked there for a long time as well. But anyways, he was in another band called Future States, and I knew his band members because of that and stuff too, but that band disbanded and they had some studio time, and they kind of just invited me out to experiment. They're like, "We don't have a band anymore, but we're out in this beautiful studio near Owen Sound." It was called Wildlife Sanctuary Sound. They've since moved into Guelph, but it was just like a beautiful remote place in the woods, and they're like, "Do you want to just come out and like write write some tunes. So that's what we did. We just went out there, and some of them they already had like bass and chord progressions for and stuff. And, but we had this really limited time arranged thing, you know, and basically it'd be like, okay, here's a bass and drum line, like go out into the woods, try to write some lyrics, come back in a couple hours, let's see what you got. And then we'd kind of just like mess around and play music. And we cranked out Exit Strategy like in that session.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like, I think it was less than a week total or something. And it was just so fun. And we just were really taken aback by how well we worked together. And we're like, holy shit, we have to keep doing this. Like that was just a fun experiment and we really have to keep doing this, you know? But so Exit Strategy came out, but then COVID hit. And so we've basically been a COVID band, and we've all since moved from Montreal. Like right now I'm in BC, Nick's up in Whitehorse, Millie's still in Montreal, and Dave is in Kitchener. But basically we just meet up for like month intensives, and like we've gone to Whitehorse twice. Like we went last year to Whitehorse for a month, and actually because of COVID we had access to this facility in the woods that was no longer being used as a outdoor education place. So we just had like these cabins to write tunes. So we just came together and basically wrote another album. And then this last year, we've met up multiple times in Kitchener and Whitehorse, and we recorded the next album in Guelph, like just maybe 2 months ago. So it's being mixed right now, and we're excited to put it out. But it kind of just like formed by accident, and then we're all in different locations and we just come together intensively. But it's also been a pandemic this whole time, so it's been just a weird time to form a band. And but it's exciting, and we have an album coming out probably in the spring. So
I'm looking forward to that. When I was in Concordia, I didn't know you sang. I recently found out that you sing, and you're an amazing singer.
Oh, thanks.
How didn't I know that you sang, Danielle? It's so good.
I mean,
I only found out recently.
Oh, thanks. Well, I might have hit it well, because I love singing and I feel compelled to do it. I don't feel like an amazing singer. It's just something I just like doing, you know. So
right.
Yeah. And I think at Concordia I was just doing, you know, electroacoustic stuff at that time, so I wasn't like working with voice too much. But it's been so nice to just get back to square one and
for sure
sing in a band again, you know.
Yeah. Nice. I have a follow-up question. Is there anything you can't do? Like,
that's the question you always want to be heard to be asked.
Oh God, I mean, I feel.
I'm kidding.
I feel like a jack of all trades. Like I'm just mediocre at everything instead of being good at one thing, you know. And I'm not saying that to like false modesty or something. I just genuinely like. I'm like, one of the central things in my life musically has always just been like less is more, and trying to pare it down, trying to put like less elements in compositions, trying to not do 10 things, because it can be a gift, but it can also be hugely distracting.
Yeah, for sure. I would really like to touch on the Migration Parade, the exhibition that you did. What is it? How did it start? How did it come about?
Okay, cool. Yeah. It came out of a really good friendship, actually. And my friend, Alexandra Goodhall, who lives here in Penticton, we were on the beach like 3 years ago, I think was the first conversation about it. And she has always done large textile art, like woolen sculpture type of work. And the way she expressed it to me was like she'd always felt that there was sound in them, or that there should be sound. So it was kind of just born out of that, like, well, let's try making some sound then, you know? And so we just, like developed the sculptures together. And I think like it's hard to know which vein to talk about, because there's like the conceptual stuff, but there's also just our working process and kind of how it's changed over time, I guess, because I feel like at first we were kind of just each in our own mediums, and then just kind of smashing them together. And then we got more into the idea of, well, what is transdisciplinary creation? Like, is there a medium that is our medium that we can work in together to create this thing like as a unified thing? Or is it always going to be like felt plus sound technology? Put them together, you know?
So it wasn't necessarily like one inspired by the other, or like the sound of this object or the object of this sound. It was really, you worked on it together structurally and compositionally. Yeah,
definitely. And more so all the time, I would say. Like, I remember in that initial conversation, I think I had just come back from the first Colombia trip with Hurtado, Del Fara, that we've all probably studied with at Concordia.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Yes. So I think one of you went to on the Colombia trip, right?
I went to Colombia, but it was not the trip.
I did not.
I went for another reason.
Okay, gotcha. Basically, there's this frog pond at the University of Caldas in Manizales, and I and others too spent just a huge chunk of time. Like, I was just obsessed with the sound of these frogs, and they struck me at once like as these absurdly comical, ridiculous creatures that are having some kind of conversation that like I don't even understand, but it's also this textural thing that makes a really beautiful sound unto itself. And I would just basically sit there for hours each night. Sometimes it was raining, sometimes it wasn't, just recording these frogs. And I was passionately talking about the timbre of the frog sounds to Alexandra, and I think that was part of its inception too. So at first there was a lot of frog sounds because we were really looking at different collectives, I guess, for lack of a better term, human and non-human animals and how they move, organize, and express, basically. And so frogs was a pretty, well, it's still, I'm still kind of obsessed with frogs, I'm not gonna lie, but like that kind of like, that's how it got birthed, basically.
Okay. All right. And so the migration parade, it has 3 phases actually. The third one hasn't happened yet. And how was the first phase interpreted in comparison to the second phase, migration parade diaspora? Did the participants interact with the installation in a way you expected?
Well, okay. So first, I should say, like, the first phase was shown in northern BC once, and then COVID happened.
Okay.
And we went, basically the whole second phase of the project was developed like as a series of residencies. It was more of a research and creation phase. So people came to the studio to visit in a masked up COVID friendly way, of course, like throughout, but it really like was more about our internal process. And then like this last phase is expanded pretty significantly in terms of like, so the first phase was 3 sculptures, and they were basically kind of almost 3 separate compositions or ideas that existed like as explorations of this theme. But 2 of them had headphones coming out of them. Then you would just sit at the sculpture and listen to headphones, like almost like the headphones were an umbilical cord. Or I need to imagine these things as sentient and bodily to sort of, it helps me engage. And then the third one had an internal speaker that just played all the time. All of that's been scrapped. So I am keeping some of the like frog talk sounds, but the other 2 compositions are only getting integrated in little ways. But now we have 9 sculptures, 19 Arduinos, and they're all on, or most of them are on ultrasonic sensors. So with various levels of like interactivity. And so now, like the first phase, they were basically just explorations and 3 separate compositions. And now it's like the puzzle of basically making one sound sculpture that can work together. If the gallery's somehow full and there's 100 people in there, if they're all being tripped at the same time, like the sensors are being tripped and all the sound is activated at once, like the puzzle then becomes like, how does that not become too much? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then like also, how can they stand on their own if only one is going off at a time? And so I've chosen to think about it as a sound sculpture where like there's things that are coming in and out, but even if everything's activated at the same time, it's one composition. Yeah. But it kind of fits the theme because Holon is like the collective within the individual and the individual within the collective. And so I'm trying to mirror that in the composition where each bit or each Arduino and each sensor, it has its own like unique composition that can stand on its own, but it's also just a piece of a larger work that is only activated if every single sculpture is being set off at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Sound installations have always been so interesting to me. Like I've never dabbled in there. Like I wish it's like
I hadn't either.
But that's so cool though. Like it's such a cool thing that you described. Like that is heavenly to me. I want to do that so badly, but I don't know like why I never thought of just finding someone and just being like, let's do a sound installation together. You know what, Anthony? We're gonna, after the podcast, we're doing a sound installation because in all seriousness, it's a beautiful thing that you can draw audiences with, you know, because it's not always a concert. It can also be a sound installation. And you know what I mean? Like music can reach people in so many different ways.
Yeah, totally. Oh, and I feel like I should add, just because I want to mention the other people involved, like one thing we did in this phase is really scale up everything. Like we're bringing in Charlie Prince, who's coming in as a choreographer with 6 dancers or movement ensemble members is what we're calling them. And they're going to do a durational piece in the gallery for, well, they're going to have this research like and rehearsal process beforehand.
Okay.
And we're working with Charlie now directly to sort of develop these ideas. And then he's coming in with his own work that he's developing like in situ, like at the gallery while it's open. And so it's kind of like a durational dance piece / research process. So the gallery space will be like also a dance studio for that first week after the opening. And then there's some other stuff happening. And then at the end of April, our friend Mia is coming in and she's working with a prof at UBC. Her name's Mia Harris. And she's working with all these like wearable sensor technologies. And it's just being built for her now. So I don't know exactly how it's going to look, but she's basically going to be interacting with the sculptures with a class, like a voice piece and movement among the sculptures as well over the course of a week. So those people are all on board for this leg of the project. And then we have a cinematographer, Kristen Brown, who's going to film the whole thing, and a photographer, Winona Ray. And I just wanted to mention their names just because it's really awesome that all these people have come together to like kind of interact with this work in this way at this time, you know? And it's definitely the largest scale thing I've ever tried to pull off. You know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And maybe like going more onto the whole sound installations discussion. Other than Migration Parade, is there other exhibitions or installations that you're like working on or plan on working on? Has this inspired other things? Like, I'm curious to know, where do you go from here?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for asking that. Well, this project has been so consuming. Like, I'm up on a mountain with my collaborator right now, and we're working basically 9 to 5, Monday to Friday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, it's just a job. We get up and we do the thing, and then maybe I'm doing some soldering, and then I go back and, now I'm working on Arduino number 3, and then checking in with her felting process. And like, she's even got a studio assistant right now. Like, we're just doing that. It's been so utterly consuming that we haven't had time to really think beyond that, let alone even find that many other places to show the work. But like, all of that's brewing, and we're also, Alexandra and I, we have our next exhibition like in the works in our minds. Nothing's been acted on because there's no time, but I feel like we're both quite committed to working together going forward. And so although I'm like totally interested in doing, you know, sound installations on my own or with other people at some point, I'm really engrossed in this process with Alexandra right now, and our next exhibition is going to be together as well.
Wow. Okay, very cool. It's so exciting. I mean, you must have like, well, no, you do have so many projects on the go and everything that, you know, now this is the next one. It's always changing. It's never dull. I feel like when you're describing what you're living, what you're experiencing.
Yeah, for sure. She's creating the snowball.
Yeah, the snowball is in full effect.
Yeah, no, it feels really good right now. Like, we're in a really good workflow together, and it's, you know, I feel like we've had a couple years to iron out the kinks, and we're just it's neat to have sort of a work partnership in this way, that like an artistic work partnership where we're just at it every day and in the same space. And I've never had the opportunity to do this before, you know?
Yeah, and that goes back to the importance of collaboration, I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, all of these cool things you're doing, it's like because of the network that you have, the people that you met. And I feel like I'm just more addressing this to the audience, because if there's a lesson to be retained here, like, look at what Danielle's doing. Like, this is because of the network she built and the people she met, and on the musical adventures she's been on, and she's able to do these fantastic things that I'm quite envious of. I feel like it's fantastic what you do, and it's something that you've worked very hard to achieve. And I know you answer very modestly, but this is like a specific kind of success where you can be creative as a job all the time. Like, that is a plane of existence, or like I don't know, like a level that you reach where you must be so happy with what you do. I feel like it's obvious to say, but like, to hear it and to experience it and to do it every day, like, what a beautiful thing, honestly.
Yeah, it does feel like a really beautiful thing. And, you know, every year it's like, okay, but how am I going to eat next month? But, you know, somehow you just keep figuring it out. So
yeah.
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 But I'm feeling just so fucking grateful.
Yeah.
Just to have collaborators that I work with in this way. Like, it's new to me just the last few years, and I'm excited to see what's next,
Of course. And where did you move to again? Remind me, please.
I'm in Penticton, BC. I wouldn't say I moved. Well, I moved here for the winter for sure. I don't know what's happening after that, but I'm here till April for this exhibition, and then yet to be determined beyond that.
Yeah, to be determined. I want to just maybe on a quick sidebar here. What's the difference in the music community in Montreal and over where you are now? I'd be curious to know that, because I feel like it's gonna be so different.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's really quite different, and I feel like I'm just rediscovering, because I've always had family in this area, and it's an area I've come back to. Like, I had a band here, like 10 years ago, and so I've cycled back on it, but I was like much more familiar with the acoustic scene, and I feel like you almost can't look at Penticton as an isolated unit. It's more like interior BC, because there's a whole world, and I'd say it's like if you're playing kind of folk and acoustic or even other types, but there's like certain genres. There's a lot of there's a network of festivals and stuff that happen that you can kind of circulate in. So I feel like I've experienced more of my acoustic self, shall I say, in BC, whereas Montreal for me has been like this foray into all things electroacoustics, and most of my opportunities out there feel electroacoustic. So this is the first time I'm kind of bridging that gap and like doing something electroacoustic in this valley, and it feels really neat. But yeah, the community here is awesome. But yeah, there's a lot of like small towns, and they're pretty connected, and people really throw a lot of like grassroots festivals that some of them are quite special to be a part of. And that's more what I'm familiar with. I'm sure there's like all these other scenes I know nothing about too, though, and I've only like my relationship to BC has been limited to like a few months here and there for the last many years, like more than a decade, so I feel like maybe I'm not qualified to answer that question, but the people I know here, I really enjoy, and there's lots of people to just even actually just play music with. Like, I was at a friend's house last weekend, we were just singing songs and playing music, and I was like, well, this is a novel concept. People still do this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's go ahead and obviously all the projects you've done so far, which one has been your favorite?
I've never done well with favorite questions. Like, I don't have a favorite color. I don't have a favorite place. I maybe have a favorite person or something, but
least favorite?
But
Jaian.
But I would say definitely not. But I would say that every project feels more engaging as I go, and it's in direct proportion to how much it asks of me or how challenging it is, I would say. And so in some ways, what I'm doing now, but there's also things about, just the raw process of songwriting in my early 20s or something that is a totally different thing. Like, it's not even in the same category. So I hate to compare them side by side, but I feel like I'm definitely enjoying the increase in like how challenging things are. It feels like that's changing, and it makes it really engaging for me. So maybe this one, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's you living in the moment. So right now it's like, it's super fun, but like next year maybe it'll be something else, because you're experiencing new things as you go.
Yeah, I guess so.
Which has been the most challenging project you've worked on?
Probably this one, just because of the scale. Like, I didn't know about Arduinos. I've never tried to make a sound sculpture or like a 19 tracks that work together like in this particular way. And maybe it's just different. Like, it's a new challenge, so it feels like the freshest one, therefore the most challenging. But even the process of songwriting itself is challenging on a personal level. Like, So probably this one. But just in terms of scale and like the amount of new challenges it's presenting, for sure.
Yeah, and probably because it has so many phases to it, and it's such a grand project.
Yeah, totally.
I think something else I want to address with you is, so obviously your day-to-day changes all the time. Like right now it's kind of regular because you have a 9 to 5, but last year it was different, and 2 months from now it might be different because something else happens. So I don't want to ask you what your day-to-day is like. That was going to be the original question, but what's your year year to year like? You see what I mean? Because I feel like a year is a good amount of time for you to embark on many projects, and you can kind of look back on a year, be like, oh, I did all these cool things, I learned all these amazing things, and now I'm here and going into 2022. Obviously, people are going to be listening to this in 2022. So what's your year to year like? I think I want to know that.
Okay, yeah, good question. I mean, yeah, like you said, I guess every year is different. Like, I think, right now life involves getting up, getting to the studio at 9. We have our little like research games, I'll call them, that we do. Then maybe I'm doing tactical tasks for a bit. Like maybe I solder some wires and Alexandra does some felting. Maybe then I delve into some composition. Then we might have a grant to write or like some people to reach out to or a meeting to go to. Like it's more just logistics of all the different facets of this project, and then playing like more acoustic music in the evenings and stuff. And then, okay, so year to year though, I'm trying to think about this question.
Yeah.
Like, you know what it is? Like before I just kind of made music and there was no attentiveness to the other aspects of like music or art kind of industry. I felt quite allergic to that for a really long time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I think like I just made music, you know what I mean? And whatever opportunities came out of that, that's what happened. But I feel like if university gave me one thing, it's like not being intimidated by the bureaucracy of it anymore. And like if there's a grant to write, I just sit down and I write it now. And those things feel more accessible. I don't feel like, oh, that's for some other person and I'm just plagued with the self-loathing and imposter syndrome of my 20s and I can't do it. It's like, no, I'm just as applicable to this thing as anybody else, and I can sit down and just kind of get to the work of it. And so I feel like that over time has opened up. Like if my year before involved some amount of hustle jobs interspersed with like playing festivals or playing acoustic music, now it's more like there's a season where I sit down and just write a bunch of grants and try to secure funding for the year. There's a portion of it where we're doing residencies. Like this last year I went up to Whitehorse and we just, we spent a month and we just spend a month together. This last time in Whitehorse, it was just working on vocal harmonies. That's all we did. Like, okay, 3-part vocal harmonies for this album that we've now written, or
nice.
The one before that was just a writing intensive to write songs. And then with Alexandra too, like we just do residencies basically in any space we can get our hands on. I don't mean necessarily a formal residency. Like we did do one formal kind of residency at an art space, and we were actually supposed to go to Semas last year in Mexico for the residency, but then COVID happened, so we just came just south of Penticton where there's a workspace for us, and that's what we're doing. We're like, okay, this is the space. It's a self-imposed residency and we're just gonna like work. So I'd say it's more like seasonal now, where there's sort of a flow of like, okay, it's time to write grants for this chunk of time, and then now it's time to like focus more on the installation work for a bunch of months, and then in the summers I tend to go more towards like band stuff, and it's kind of, I guess there is sort of a seasonal rotation at the moment, which is interesting.
We kind of talked about the projects you've been involved in and that you've worked on. I kind of want to get a little bit more technical now. Let's talk about some of your standout gear or software or plugins that you like using while composing.
Okay, yeah. Well, like I said, I've always been kind of a Luddite, I guess, and I've been slow to the gear game, like really slow,
Sure.
But this last year, probably my most exciting discovery was Reactor, and I'm working in that a lot because I don't know if you've used it, but
yeah, of course.
It's very like
I love Native Instruments.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the best. It's the best.
Yeah, so it's very like choose your own adventure. Like, you can get down to the nitty gritty and like invent your own DSP algorithm, or you can like play with some preset synths, or you can build stuff more like modular or anything in between. And so I remember doing Max and stuff in school, and like that was super interesting, but I didn't find a quick workflow in with it right away to keep me engaged over a long enough period. And I'd still want to get better at Max for sure, but I feel like with Reactor there's like, there's an immediate in, and then you get a bit deeper and you can start building stuff, and then you can get even deeper than that. And so there's like a choose your own adventure element that really appeals to me. So that's probably my biggest discovery. I'd say I still like have a lot to learn in terms of plugins. Like I don't use a ton,
right?
And I still like honestly do a lot. But this is gonna sound funny because I know this this isn't even the best editor, but like I still spend a lot of time like just editing the sounds I want in Amadeus until they're like the shape that I want, and then putting them into Logic or whatever else.
Yeah.
What's that?
Same. It's totally a very usable platform to edit some audio. It's not silly at all.
It's good.
Totally.
I love Amadeus.
Yeah.
No, I approve that. I approve that. No, you're amongst friends here when you say that.
Okay, cool. Sweet.
Yeah, I basically did my entire program on Amadeus.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Same.
Totally. So,
Are we all the same person?
Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, no, because that's great. I feel, okay, that's great. Whew. Just let the cat out of the bag. You're like, oh, me too. Yeah. Okay, phew. Yeah, and like, so yeah, probably Reactor editing, and then like I'm slowly starting to build a modular synth, and then like using more like digital, like even a little bit of VCV rack and stuff like that, just to like work my head around modular more. So, and then recording, like honestly, it's probably mostly like Reactor, recording my own sounds, editing, and then modular stuff. So
okay,
nice.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm organizing, like I'm arranging everything in Logic these days, just because I didn't feel like getting Pro Tools.
Yeah, no, I understand. The wallet on Pro Tools is heavy. I totally understand. I got myself a perpetual license.
I aspire to be
4 digits go, and I was like, oh man. There it goes.
For sure. Totally. I aspire to be a Reaper user, just, because I think the spirit of the thing is nice. Like, it seems like a really awesome DAW, but also it's, like a lot more accessible. So, I haven't actually used it. I have it, but I don't use it. I use Logic. So,
Actually, I just want to do a quick sidebar here. I had a friend, an audio engineer. I will not name this person because this person swore by Pro Tools. It was like, Pro Tools is my life. And the other day, I saw an Instagram story of them running a live audio session on Reaper, and I was like, I'll say you're using Reaper now, huh?
Yeah, totally.
This person's like,
look at you fucking throwing them under the bus.
And then I was like, because I was like, you should use Reaper once in a while. I was like, no, Pro Tools just does everything I need. And I'm like, so why are you using Reaper? It's lighter than Pro Tools. Like, I saw it.
Totally.
I knew it.
Totally.
I can't wait for him to watch this episode and be like, fuck you, Jaian, for calling me out.
No comment. No comment.
You know who you are.
No names and no comments. But Danielle, actually, I want to mention, if you like Reactor and native instrument stuff, check out Absinthe 5. I use it a lot.
Okay.
And it's very cool. It's not the same as Reactor, but it definitely can do like really cool like designed effects, and like a lot of the electronic composers use it too. So I don't know. I really like Absinthe and Reactor. Those are my go-to native instrument tools.
Oh, sweet. So, yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I'm always looking for ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
I have a couple of like rapid fire questions before we get to the end here. On like specific compositions you've done. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to Migration Parade. There was a song on your SoundCloud called Holon, Holon. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to it, and it was just like this medley of textures that you did that were just like so cool. And maybe I'm not gonna ask you like, how did you do like 36 seconds? How did you get this frequency to pop out? But like basically, how do you go about creating sonic textures that have so many different layers and richness and tone, and like it's so eclectic, and I am trying to accomplish that, and it seems very natural to you, or maybe at least you got it down. So how do you go about doing that? Like just creating sonic textures, like even for Hold On or any other composition that you've done, specifically electroacoustic?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, probably like I was saying before, just like a lack of like MIDI and plugin knowledge when I was studying electroacoustics forced some really strange habits on me, where like, Amadeus was the thing I used. And I'm like, so I just learned, if I wanted delay, I didn't even put delay on. I would just take the track, copy it, move it over until it felt right, and then like maybe rearrange some internal structures. So then you're still getting a delay effect, but like you're deciding where those delays are. Wow. And that's the long way around. That's a kind of funny way it's a super like odd way to do it, I think. I mean, I don't really know because I haven't had the opportunity to watch everybody's workflow or that many people's, obviously. But I think mostly that, like thinking about it more like a textile or like knitting, where like, okay, I'm just going to take this layer. And then, so a lot of it is really about combining sounds. Like I really like sourcing my own sounds. So far, I have never used a sample. I don't know, like somebody else's sample. And I don't know why why that would bother me, and I totally approve of other people using samples, but just personally, I just haven't, I don't know. I just feel like I need to record the sound and then do the thing, you know? So it's some combination of just going towards sounds I'm interested in. Like I'm really interested in like watery sounds and woody sounds, for lack of a better term, like crackly and...
Watery is a good way to say it.
Yeah. And like bent notes and stuff like that. So this like hold on is becoming more of a sustained exploration of that. I actually don't even remember what's up for the hold on part, because that's the part I'm working on now. And I put something up as a placeholder because someone needed like a sample of what we were doing.
Okay.
But like I actually don't even remember what's there specifically, because it's I'm like actively working on it right now. And so I'm really working with a lot of water sounds, and I would say basically editing. Yeah, like going in and taking whatever, like 400 samples and placing it here, and there, or just like detuning 10 cents and like doubling the track and detuning just a little bit, or just taking like parts of the internal structures and throwing, like reversing just part of the sound for a little bit, and basically just experimenting like that to like get things I like. But again, it's probably an awkward way to do things, because like I'm really drawn to making beats, for instance, but the only times I've made anything beat based is it's been either pulling like some stuff from a sequencer with analog synth and then basically just like editing again, where I'm just placing, like there's no metronome, there's nothing locked into quantization. I've never quantized anything, and I just go in and like
you
like take
are such a rare breed, Danielle. I'm hearing you right now. I'm sorry for cutting, like for interrupting, but like you are such a rare breed. You like, I don't know other people do. I don't know anyone else who does it like that, and that's like why it's like uniquely you. You know what I mean? Like I quantize all the time. Anthony quantizes all the time. Like
that's good. That's
in Logic called Q, and I just hit Q and I quantize, and I don't think about it, and I never thought of like never using it because it's just so available. But like you have this like abstract way of approaching it, and like I think that's why your compositions stand out. You know what I mean? That's why they like stand on their own and they have their own life. Like it's so cool to think about. Like I'm just like realizing it as I'm saying this. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks. I always thought about it as just a lack of skill, because I was like, you know, I say in the electroacoustic program, I'm like, shit, how do you use MIDI? I don't know, and I don't have time to figure it out, so I'm just going to keep editing. You know what I mean?
No
like,
to MIDI. No MIDI.
And now, like, turns out MIDI is super easy to use, and I am starting to use it a little bit, but I still just, like, if I want to if there's, like, a sequence off of an analog synthesizer, like, I'll pull that in, and then maybe I'll take, like, say a sample of a water drop, and I'll just put that on top of one of the beat, and then the next time it comes around, maybe I'll detune that just a little bit and just place everything where I want it, and I decide if it sounds like a cohesive beat by ear, but I think it's I hopefully will find, like, a better way to do things, because it seems like a awkward workflow, but I also love editing more than I love other aspects of digital sound. So
yeah, I can tell.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And Loon Town, I wanted to ask about specifically, I was listening to a bunch of songs and I was like, well, okay, this is like, there's this really cool rock element to it, you know, like guitars and everything. But then one song just came out, I forget what it was, which one it was, but it had just like synth, like a nice synth line riding along it. And how did you specifically, because I know you guys do synth rock, but like what made you decide to do synth rock? Because I don't listen to that much synth rock, and I kind of like opened a new door and I've been listening to it a bit more lately on Spotify. So what made you want to do synth rock with Loon Town? Like why synth, and why including it? Like I'm really curious of that.
Oh, well, I feel like probably my answer will be anticlimactic, because the simple answer is Nick. Like my bandmate Nick plays synth, and they were already doing that. And when I showed up, and they love synth sounds. And actually, to this day, even though I'm getting like a lot deeper into modular synth and I play piano, I've never really played keyboard synth, which is another just, I guess, I don't know, idiosyncrasy. And I don't play synth in this band. I play guitar, and I played a little bit of banjo and like a lot of voice. And we've thrown other layers on, but Nick's the synth player. And in terms of the genre, it's not like we made a conscious decision like, oh, let's write a synth rock album. We just had these songs and we're like, what genre does this kind of fit in? And I'm not even sure it is synth rock, honestly. We're just playing with, like, you know, I find genres a bit nebulous sometimes. Like there's things that clearly fall into certain genres, and then there's a lot of music that's just kind of like, it's kind of this and it's kind of that, and it's not that it's beyond definition, but it's just
no, definitely. And then the last question I had for you was on the song Exit Strategy. That one really was the one that stood out to me. There was different instrumentation, and I just felt like that song flowed very naturally, you know. It just just kind of started playing and it turned around the corner, it went somewhere else, and it never got dull. This one really stood out to me. Like, what was the creative process behind that song specifically for Exit Strategy?
Oh, yeah. Basically, Nick and Dave had some kind of structure for the chords and stuff because they had been playing together, like I said, for years before I showed up. And then Millie, our drummer, came on board, and there was some kind of like improv at the end, you know, or at the beginning, sorry, not the end.
Right.
And then the melody and lyrics came after, you know what I mean? Like they were put on completely after the fact. They weren't born in the moment with the band, which is like, it's interesting. And some, like for me, almost every song I've ever written, I write the chords and the music and the words at the same time. It just kind of comes out and then sometimes you edit the words later, you know, but this was more like finding a melody to this structure that existed, you know? And so it was super interesting. And like now we're in a totally different way, but that's how that one came about.
Okay, right on. I also had another question where this is not necessarily like a music-based question because we talked about music and audio. But the one thing for me on the podcast is like, I think like, I don't want to just focus on like the space of sound. I really want to focus on everything around it. And obviously you do a lot of music, you do a lot of audio, and you keep yourself busy with that. But what do you do outside of that to not oversaturate yourself? Like whether it be, connecting with people, you know, how do you stay like sane? Because I personally feel like how can I say this? Like mental health wise, sometimes it gets like intense and I overwhelm myself with projects. Like how do you just stay consistent and what do you do to like just keep your feet on the ground? You know what I mean? Like to really be happy and just to be in a good headspace.
Yeah, totally. That's a good question. Thanks. That is a very good question. I think I'm just learning about boundaries now. Like if I'm interested in something, I want to work on it all day and then obsess about it all night and then wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it and then repeat the process and then do that 7 days a week. And it's actually only like this year, say with the Migration Parade project, that I said to Alexander before I got here, like I'm just going to try out 9 to 5 and put in a weekend, because last year when we were up here, it's like you just end up working 6 or 7 days a week because you get obsessed. And if you don't put those boundaries in place, like they won't put them themselves for you. You don't have a boss to tell you what to do, so you have to figure it out. And I think I have got pretty depleted at times and then just had to, where it's really all or nothing, where I'm just working obsessively or I'm not doing anything, you know? And I'm just totally. But I'm just starting to find more like healthy boundaries around that. And I think like one big thing for me is exercise, like outdoors, not at a gym, just like, and I'm very lucky right now, there's a mountain behind me. So sometimes I'll just squeeze it in at the lunch hour, you know, it's like, okay, I'm just going to like go up the mountain for 15 minutes, but just keeping your legs strong actually works wonders for mental health, I find, because I don't know, it's just important to keep your blood flowing. Like I don't function well when, if I just completely ignore my body. So I just find any little way that I can put that in. And then like, well, yeah, maybe this will sound how it sounds too, but like I try to meditate most days, like just even like 10 minutes, you know, just something to kind of just...
Nice. Yeah. I do too. I've been meditating for 300 plus days every day this year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not that consistent, but it's...
But I want to echo what you're saying, because I want to echo what you're saying, because meditation has been a key to just like keeping myself like calm. Starting a new position this year in a big broadcast company, being the youngest there, it was a lot of pressure that I put on myself, like pressure I've never felt before. And meditating every single day literally made me realize like, you can do this, you're doing this, you're learning, you're working hard, be proud of yourself, don't overwhelm yourself, you know?
Totally.
You have to take care of yourself, and you only have one body, you only have one brain, and you only have one life. And like decisions that you make in your 20s, like pushing yourself too hard, overwhelming yourself too much, like will have such a huge impact for you in your 30s and your 40s. And the foundation is right now, you know what I mean? So work hard, but to a certain extent, you know, like do not overwhelm yourself. It's really, I don't know, I really feel like it's something that needs to be more discussed in our industry, because it is one where like we just get caught up and we don't see the time go by, you know? We don't see the time go by and we just work super hard, super fast, and then we got at the end of the day, we're like, what? 6 hours of sleep? Really? That's all I get? You know what I mean? Like, can you relate to that in any aspect?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think like in the arts, well, I don't know other industries, but I think it's particularly rife because it's so entrepreneurial. You don't leave it at work at 5, it follows you around everywhere. Yeah. And then, you know, our culture is such that we are completely obsessed with being like goal driven, and they're always being a next, and like this idea of always achieving something greater and greater and greater. And frankly, I think that some of that line of thinking is contrary to at least my process with art making. You know what I mean? And like art it has its own goals. It's self-organizing. It kind of forms itself by just showing up. And so you do need a routine around showing up, but you're not gaining anything by, like martyring yourself on the stake of trying to like succeed in that way, because it's one of these things like there's literally like so many different people involved in the arts doing with so many different workflows that it would stagger our minds to think about, you know. There's people that put out one album every 10 years and that's their flow, and they sleep for 12 hours a day in the in-between. And there's other people that like obsessively on the hamster wheel all the time, just like, you know, and some of that's because it's just our disposition and it's what comes natural. And then some of it is this kind of driven like feeling that we need to accomplish something in particular. But I think in order to really drop down for me anyways, into like my art making process, it requires getting out of that way of thinking. And so more and more, I'm just trying to put like basic structures with reasonable hours in place and just show up at the appointed hour, like I'm showing up for duty, and then leave it at a certain time too. And it's funny that the end result of like playing music for years and whatever freeforming is like self-imposing a 9 to 5, but that's how I'm dealing with it right now, because I had no boundaries before, and it was either exhausting and then you need to take long breaks, and then you feel guilty for taking breaks, and then you get into you know have an imposter syndrome about the whole thing, and it can just cycle and feel very, very destructive, you know. So absolutely. I think it's just about finding routines that work for you. But I really think we can't overestimate the value of like good food, exercise, fresh air, like a little meditation, a loving partner, you know, those kind of things that really like
those things are so key. Yeah,
for sure. And then actually like setting aside time for friendships, because I have a hard time just hanging out in things that aren't related to projects. And I'm really trying to just be like, it's okay to just play a board game once in a while, or do something that's totally outside of what you think you're into, you know?
Absolutely. I think that's like a beautiful way to like, that's basically everything I had to ask. I think this is a beautiful point to start slowly concluding things. I don't know, Anthony, is there anything else you wanted to like ask, or Danielle, if there's anything else you want to say? I feel like that was beautiful. That was beautiful. I really like appreciated that.
Me too. Thanks so much for bringing me on, and all the thoughtful questions and detailed too. I was like, wow, you really looked into things. It's awesome.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, we were really excited to have you on.
For sure. So Anthony, is it tradition time?
Yeah. So Danielle, here we've kind of created a tradition where we ask our guests one final question. And our question to you is, what is your advice to people who want to get into the space of sound?
That's a good question. The first thing that comes to mind is listen, you know, like actually take time and listen in conscious ways, make up games for yourself, just find new ways to listen. Okay. And then the other thing would be something akin to what we're just talking about in a way, which is if you feel compelled to work in this way, show up to it and do your task every day like it is your wholly appointed duty, you know? Treat it as such, you know, like it's a not duty in the sense of like some kind of burden, but just take it seriously and show up regularly, you know, because get rid of the distractions, put your phone in a box, you know, turn off the internet when possible, get comfortable with ambiguity, get comfortable not knowing shit about how it's going to turn out. Just show up and do the practice and do the work, and the learning will come and the art will make itself in a way. I feel like, the more disciplined your daily practices, and again, I don't mean like discipline to the point of breaking yourself, but just regularity, you know, showing up every day or a number of days a week that you find comfortable with. I think the more you can have like routines and kind of ritual around it, the more natural it'll feel to put it out into the world, because it'll feel like an extension of you, you know? So I'd say like, don't worry about like hyping yourself up or what it all means. Just come to the practice with sincerity and just do that, you know, and everything else will come from that. And I think just that and listening.
Awesome.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way to answer it. Okay, let's where can people find you, Danielle? Like, let's say I just listened to this podcast. I love what I heard. Where can I listen to your music? What are your projects? What are your social media handles? Everything obviously will be linked in the description, but please take a moment to promote your website and everything you would like to share with us.
Oh, sure. Well, I feel like my website leads to everywhere else. So that is Danielle-Savage.com. And I think it leads to SoundCloud and Bandcamp and Instagram and all those things. My Instagram is Danielle Savage Sound. I honestly don't use Facebook much. I try to check up on it because I do have a artist page, but it's horribly neglected. So that's just the way it is.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, but probably the website is the best.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So that will be linked in the description as well with their Instagram, SoundCloud, and Facebook page that may have a post by the time you listen to this episode in 2022.
Exactly, it's possible. Yeah, or it might even be gone. Who knows?
It might be meta by then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Anthony, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, please finish.
Oh, just thanks so much for taking time out of your lives to chat.
Well, thank
For
you.
sure. Thank you for
yeah,
no, for real.
for being here.
Yeah. Anthony, where can people find you?
For me, you can find me on Instagram at akachi.audio. That's at acaci.audio. And you can find me on Spotify as Akachi. That's it for me.
Perfect. I am at Jaian Music on pretty much every social media. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/Jaian Music. And I think I'm going to take a page out of Danielle's book. If you go on jaianmusic.com, you'll find all of my social media and it leads to everything else. So follow me there. Go over there. If you need an audio engineer for some mixing or mastering services, I'm there for that. And you can also follow the podcast Soundspace and any of your podcatcher that you listen to your podcast on. And all of our social media will also be linked in the description. So for myself, Danielle, and Anthony, this has been another episode of Soundspace. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.